Glad to be clean today. Recovering from a 18-year violent shark attack-like bong session. And I don't know if it ever worked, but it was my mind's attempt at a solution. And I was adopted into a family at like 2 weeks old, family of people that had at least a bit of an attachment to alcohol. And I tried to straighten them out by beating them to death with my bong. I was smoking pot in their house, selling pot at their house. It was total insanity. But, I think a big part of recovery is looking at some of the stuff that was going on before I started using. So, I was at about age 5, I was a fully blown sugar and caffeine addict, soda pop, and always had room for dessert. By the 2nd grade, I was stealing from my mom's purse and from neighbors and stores. I was lying to kids. And justifying all my behavior. I had some secret behavior. I got attached to cigarettes a bit at age 10, stealing my dad's cigarettes. And then at 14, I started smoking pot and using whatever you had. And I do mean whatever. But, I started working at that time. I would get off work, I'd get off early for like at 12:45 from high school and to bong myself in shape for work at 5 o'clock. And I spent most of that money on pot. So to me, I was in self-pity always when I would give my earned dollars to these drug dealers that I didn't like. And I know they were putting some extra sticks and seeds in my bags at times. I probably bought at least 4 pounds of sticks throughout the years. So is this a place I can get a refund? But yeah, so by age 32, I was in a lot of self-pity for being in between a relationship, as I usually was. And I had hurt my finger at work, and I thought they might send me for a drug test. So I said a prayer in self-pity. God help me. And a couple weeks later, I looked in the phone book and found a 12-step meeting and started going, every night. And it took me a few weeks for my stash to run out. And then after 2 weeks of making meetings and really doing nothing else, I started feeling a little different, and I got 2 weeks clean. And then I had a real bad relapse and smoked and used other things for about 2 weeks and found out what they meant by it gets worse. And I got some direct experience with that, and then crawled back to a meeting and got a sponsor because somebody had told me to do that. And then I started memorizing some prayers, went to a meeting every day, called him every day. On my days off, I would go to 2, 3, 4 meetings a day. I did 132 in-person meetings in 90 days. The obsession to use was lifted before I ever wrote an inventory. At about 4 months, I wrote an inventory. Then I was working on defects. As soon as I came in, I was starting to eat better. So I was looking back, I was working on defects right then. So at about 6 months sober, I finally got that 4-step written, and I shared that, that 5-hour inventory was 30 pages, but I went on and on. I think I went a little, more than just what I had written, or maybe a whole lot more. But, and I can't say it was a great experience or anything. The real freedom came when my sponsor gave me permission to work the 4-step because I had just told him one of my secrets. That was really freeing. So the big fear was kind of already gone by the time I wrote it and shared the 5th step. And I've done some other 5th steps since that were more eye-opening, but at least I felt like I was trying to do the deal, But I remember what he said after that 5th step. He said, I said, I'm ready for step 6 and 7 because I wanted to hurry up and get through the steps and working with somebody else that had more sobriety. My sponsor had 7 years and I had zilch. And I knew some people with like 20 years and 30 years that I wanted to work the steps with. So I said, I'm ready for step 6 and 7. And he said, you have to live step 6 and 7. And I feel like that's happening now. I could say I'm doing it, but really it's just happening to some extent. But then I made my first 8-step list, and then I started making direct amends face-to-face. And, my image, to me, a 5th step is done face-to-face, not FaceTime or Slapchat or whatever they got going on these days on the internet. I don't even text. I don't know what an app is. I don't want to know. But anyway, I started making some direct amends, and I remember going to make an amends to my mom, and I told her I stole from her, and she said, I said, I want to pay you back. And she said, that's all right. Face to face. She said, that's all right. Like a lot of people with those financial amends, face to face, that's all right. And so I went to my sponsor, and he said, you did your part. I went to this other guy, like a recovery legend guy with 33 years, and said, what happened? And he said, you did your part. And then I went to this other guy who's my sponsor now, who has over 50 years of clean time. I said to him, I said, maybe some months later, I said, I feel like, my mom said, that's all right when I offered to pay her money. And he said, if you really want to get that money to your mom, you can put it in her coat pocket. You can put it in her purse. You can put it in her car, or you could mail it to her. So I started mailing her money. And so she said, that's right. I was thoroughly convinced she wasn't going to accept it. And I told my sponsor, David, that, and he said, before he was my sponsor, he was helping me with some amends because he had more experience with that than my sponsor. I trusted him more. And so, I said, I know she's not. He said, no, just make the amends. Like, don't go into a story about what you think she's going to do. And I was thoroughly convinced she wasn't going to accept the money. She did, and I'm totally okay with that. And then eventually she said, you did your part. Another amend I made, the guy was very uncomfortable. It was a questionable amend because somebody else was partaked in the illegal activity, and it was his idea. So I didn't bring him up at all, but I made the amends for what he stole. And nobody told me I had to do it, but I did. And I remember this is my best friend's dad. And, me and this kid in 3rd and 4th grade, I was in 3rd grade, he was in 4th grade. I told him my friend is out of town, and he said, let's break in and let's go over there. And I thought, oh no. And he knew how to break right in through the window well with a knife. I don't know how they cut the glass or anything, but we got in there, and I thought all we took was some matches, but he took something else. And so I remember making that amend, said, I stole something from you. I don't remember what it was, but, here's some money, and I had an envelope, and the guy said, that's okay. And I could tell he was uncomfortable with me being there. He hadn't seen me for years. He was very uncomfortable with me standing at his doorstep making that amend. And then I walked away, and I got about 10 feet away, and I walked back to make that amend. I was going to put it in his mailbox right by his door, and he opened the door up again, and I handed it to him. And he said, keep doing what you're doing. And another guy that I sold pot to that I made profit off of, I remember making an amend to him face-to-face, and he started crying. He said, people don't do this. And I said, well, I have to be honest. And then, 2 days before my first 3-year anniversary in 1994, in the spring of 94, I went over to a friend's house and asked to see his pot. I went there like I sometimes did. I had a boundary to stay in the kitchen and just talk to his mom and him if he came in the room. And my mind told me I really just wanted to see his mom, and that seemed true. And then when I'm subject to change without notice. That's important for me to realize to this day. And so I said, after I was sitting there for a while, I said, do you have any pot? And he said, yeah. I said, could I see it? I looked at it, and then we went to a movie, and then we smoked some. And then the next morning, it was bunkweed. It was lousy. Otherwise, I might still be out there. Who knows what happened? But the next morning, I called my sponsor and went to a meeting. Quit quoting the literature for a few weeks. Almost humbled me for a minute or two. And then 4 months later, I used an intoxicant again, a non-MA improved intoxicant. So so I had those 2 one-night relapses in '94. So my new dry date is 7/4/1994, and shortly after that, I went to actually before that, when I was a year and a half sober, I called up this guy with 50 years of sobriety, and no, he had 40 something at the time, but he died with over 60 years. And I called up this guy that I was sent to his group. It was a working step group. And he had me within the first 5 minutes of the for my first phone conversation with him, making a new 8-step list within the first 5 minutes. He said, "What have you done with the 12 steps?" He asked me my name, and I told him my name. He says, "How old are you? How long have you been sober?" I said, "A year and a half, 33 years old." He said, "What have you done with the 12 steps?" I said, "I made a beginning on all 12, but it's been so long ago, it doesn't seem like it's doing any good right now." And he said, he said, "Have you done an inventory?" I said, "Yeah, 1 big one and 1 small one." He says, "You got an 8-step list?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Where is it?" I looked for it, and I was all panicked. And after about 30 seconds, I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Grab a piece of paper." He says, "You got one?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Grab a bigger one." He says, put down your parents. He says, "You got any brothers or sisters?" He says, "Put them down." He says, "You got any employers you stole from?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Put them down." He says, "Add to the list as things come to you." He says, "You got any amends on this? You got any amends that you could make this weekend on this list? You got any amends on this list that you could make this weekend?" I said, "Yes." And I remember being miserable that weekend. I was clean and sober, eating better, but still the same miserable fool, menace to society. And I, and I remember going to my first employer that I sold meat and beer from on that Sunday night on the way to the midnight shift. And I made that amend. This guy was smiling. I thought maybe he knew what was going on, because I don't tell people I'm in recovery. I just make the amend. I right the wrong, face-to-face, direct, paying the money. I still no sorry, no mumbling that I'm sorry. Just make the wrong right. And he's like, "That's okay, that's okay." We went back and forth a little bit, and I finally said, "Look, I need to do this for me." And he said, "Okay, pay the cashier." I walked out there. I felt taller. The only time in my life I felt taller. I got instant gratification, because that was my favorite amend. And then, after those, in '94, those 2 one-night relapses, then I started meditating. Because my quiet times before that were like reading, saying some quick memorized prayers, sometimes some sincere heartfelt prayers when I was in enough pain, some spontaneous, just help me kind of deals. And but then I started attempting to meditate, and it gradually got a little bit longer. Nothing earth-shattering. Nothing I've done has been earth-shattering. But, my main thing has been showing up to meetings and then eventually, taking these quiet times. And then I started working on really clean diet and really like living like a monk. And after those relapses, I look back and say, wow, what a response. So, before recovery and sponsorship, the longest I stayed clean was 11 weeks in boot camp in the Marines, and then periodically in Okinawa, where they didn't have pot, which I thought was criminal. Actually, I did spend $35 on a joint there. You want to feel degraded? Spend $35 on a skinny joint. So, I'm really not here with any answers. I don't, I'm kind of like, I'm open to the possibility that I don't even know what's best for me, let alone anyone else. And to me, I want to kind of walk through my view now on the 12 steps. I'd say the core of my recovery is acting like I'm powerless, which I could call, part of the first step, or the main part, or the only part I really need to get, is acting like I really want to stay clean by avoiding places and people that use intoxicants or where intoxicants are at, especially the green dead plant that I used to worship. So And to me, the second step is basically stop looking to the mind for truth and know that I'm not the one living this life. I'm not the doer. That kind of a trust in life, and that some intelligent energy that I can't explain, I can't draw a picture of, is getting his heart to beat, and I'm open to this. It's the same energy that's getting the tree to grow. And the third step for me is to stop looking to the future and the world for happiness and try to be here where I'm at and realize that outside the world of the mind, all is well right here, right now. And to me, with the inventory, it's just looking at myself. It's all it is. If I want to follow a format, fine. I've had great experiences without just writing about myself. But just really, whatever can be found for me it's been an innocent attempt to try to get away from pain. I can judge myself, but that's not going to help me. I can try to hate my defects to go away. Things that don't go away until I've gotten enough pain and they're ready to go away. I don't know how change happens, but to me, whatever I found in the fourth step is not the truth of who I really am. It's my behavior that needed to be addressed and needed to be looked at, needed to be shared, and needed to be, get rid of the unsellable goods. So to me, the fifth step is important to do face-to-face in person. Otherwise, it's not a real fifth step. And if I, if I had to do it over again, I like the idea of grabbing some bum and paying him $20 and telling him at least my worst stuff, the graveyard stuff, the secrets I was going to the grave with. To me, that's the real purpose of the fifth step. But the exact nature of my wrongs is I believe in the appearances, everything that can be seen as the final reality, and ignore my true nature, that which is seeing it. That which is, my true nature has never changed, ever. Everything else has changed. Who I think I am, my behaviors. I've had all these false identification labels. Before recovery, I used a false identification label as I'm a power lifter. I didn't feel good about my jobs, working in warehouses usually. So I'd say, if somebody said, "What do you do?" I'd say, I unload trucks, but I'm a power lifter. And it's just kind of an innocent attempt to avoid hurt feelings, because I've had some uncomfortable feelings come up throughout the years. And all my strategies to try to avoid that don't work. But to me, the step 6 and 7 today, I was on a 6-step meeting, and one of the questions I think out of the workbook or something was something about, what's my job? If I'm ready and God's going to remove these defects, what's my job? And what came up for me today was to soften, to kind of get out of the way, to have kind of an ease of being, to take some baby step to do at least something a little different. I mean, I'm not going to crack open if I fall to pieces if I make a little change. And to me, the real thing with substance, with like any change, it's right now. Now is the only time to change. I can have all these plans of great future happiness, but it's all in the world of thought, of an imagined future, and the future's not guaranteed. And to me, step 8, I remember it was the third time I wrote a step 8. I felt like I got spiritual benefit just from writing down the names. It's a 2-part step. Write down the names, and then if I become willing, that happens. But I don't have to think that there's a 9th step when I'm writing that list. Just look at the harm I've done. And if I get honest, whatever happens to me, it's too late and too little for some of the harm I did. When I compile it all together, a lot of selfishness, a lot of self-will and riot, though I usually didn't think so, because I could find somebody else that I imagined was worse than me to justify my behavior. And to me, with the 9th step, it's for me to get free. It's not to sell 12-step recovery or anything like that. It's for me to get free from my past, something that I don't know if too many other spiritual paths have the benefits. It's where the magic is. It's where the magic is for me. And to me, the 10th step is just looking at myself and without judgment. And sometimes I feel that if somebody's still hurt, it might be best to wait a little bit to say I was wrong. And if I don't want to use that word, I could say I had an innocent misperception that if I got my way, my life would be better, and I was totally unconcerned with you, because to this day, I know the truth about the way my mind is. I'm mainly concerned about myself. And I just don't judge that. I'm just not as self-destructive as I used to be. I live what I consider a practical lifestyle. To me, it's about staying clean and sober, obeying the law, being super clean with my diet, doing some exercise, getting to bed at a reasonable hour, and I can't make myself get to sleep, but I can only intend to get to sleep, but just at least rest if I can't sleep as good as I want to. My whole life has been like this story of it hasn't been good enough mentally, but the truth is it's been good enough to be here as I am. And to me, the 11th step is, any kind of prayer. To me, my favorite prayer was I paid $3 for my favorite prayer. I went out to eat with somebody after a meeting early on, and the guy just innocently, I bought him a burrito, and he innocently told me that he was praying for the obsession to use to go away. If I ever see him, I might give him another $3. But I've memorized prayers, and I think that they can get almost like just kind of a ritual thing for me, where I just say them. Like I know how long it takes to. Sometimes I just say a certain prayer to time myself doing something. But to me, I think the best prayers have been these sincere prayers when I'm in desperate need of help. My first 15 years, my first 15 years of making meetings, I felt like a lot of the time that I was kind of like swimming in the ocean, barely with one nostril out of water, and people were swimming past me, and I was telling them, you need to get your elbows out of water better and kick better. And to me, like, I don't even know what the word meditation means. I'm not into dictionaries. I think the people who wrote them weren't awake. But to me, I go to, particularly somebody who was a monk, and it wasn't working for him. But to me, I sit in a chair and relax. That's what he recommends. More and more time in meditation without a technique. He says it's not a technique to master. It's much more a form of silent prayer. It's making a commitment to something other than my restless mind. And for me, step 12, I really don't know what awakening is. I know what it's not. It's not skillful living. That's a whole different arena, and it's not either or. And I know it's not the acquisition of anything new. I'm open to the possibility it's seeing what has never been touched by anything, and I've gotten a glimpse of that, but I don't say I'm awake, so I really can't talk about that. But I can say that it does seem important for me to practice these principles in all my affairs, not because I'm a spiritual person, because it hurts if I don't. And with helping others, I think, it's best for me to leave life alone and let it be, but if somebody asks me for something, I can say, I could share my experience with you, but then you might think that you need to have my experience, and I don't know what you need. I really don't. Find what works for you. If it's climbing a tree and crowing like a rooster, hip hip hooray. Let me know, because I'll be your long distance cheerleader. But you don't need to have my experiences. 12-step recovery is one way. It's not the way. It's one way of one of the things that I've used to try to change. And to me, all I really know is there's space for all that is, and I'm right where I'm supposed to be. So I want to say a little bit about some of my favorite experiences. One was my first sponsor. He did something that I was upset about, and I said, "You're fired." And he said, "I don't know what that means." He wouldn't let me fire him. It was beautiful. And one time I called my new sponsor up and said, he said something, and I said, "Well, I'm not going to do that." And he said to me, "Well, continue to suffer." Another time I called him up and said, I've got a resentment. He says, "You're looking to get stoned, Buster." And then I called his sponsor's sponsor a few times, or several times or more, And I was about 6 months clean, and the first time around in '91 there, and I called him up and I said, I'm thinking of leaving recovery. And he said, I'm all for it if you think it's getting in the way of your spiritual development. And then another time around that time, I had made a meeting, about 6 months clean. I made a meeting, and I heard somebody say they wanted to help somebody. And I came home, and I was napping before my midnight shift, and laying there thinking, I really want to help somebody. It was a beautiful, sincere desire. And one time I took somebody to a meeting, and that felt really nice. I went to the meeting, and the meeting was closed. I went to the central office, and they said, "Do you want to do a 12-step call?" And I said, "What's that?" And they said, "Just talk to this guy on the phone. He wants to get clean." And I took the guy to a meeting, and I don't know what happened to him after that. I gave him a book, and it felt nice. But so here I was. I had this desire to help somebody, and I called up this guy with 33 years and said, I really want to help somebody. He said, "Listen, are you listening? You could unselfishly not ruin somebody's life by trying to help them." And to me, my sponsor said, you work these steps 1 through 12, 1 through 12, 1 through 12, and then if somebody asks you for help, then then I can say, I'm a steel and case cement knucklehead. I don't know what's best for you, let alone me. And then I can share some of my experience if you want, but that doesn't mean you have to have that experience. You're free to use your own common sense. But I don't know about anyone else. When I came in here, I don't know if I had any. I was so sick I didn't know I was sick. And to me, this is not this No Smoke Club isn't about just not smoking. If it is for some people, perfect. But for me, my early recovery was a strong emphasis on a much more important demonstration of these principles lies before us in our respective homes, occupations, and affairs. So to me, I'm not just grateful to be clean and sober, but to be practical, organized. I write down everything I spend. I live like a decent human being, and I don't know how that happened, but it's happening. And I don't know if there was any thanks to me. Maybe thanks to pain. What does the grandmother fellowship say? Pain is the touchstone of all spiritual growth. So maybe one of my defects is wanting just nothing but an ease, no difficulty, just everything that I want. And that's not. That has never happened, and I don't think it is ever going to happen. So maybe I can just kind of relax and be with life instead of constantly, fascinated with the contents of my mind that are telling me these suffering type stories that life would be better if it was at least a little bit different. You know what? If it was different, it'd just be different. Different doesn't guarantee long-time betterment. Anyway, that's enough out of me. Thank you. Peace.